Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone. Today we are going to talk about narrative text. Before we start this presentation, it would be nice if we say basmalah together. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. And don't forget to prepare yourself, your pen and your notebook if you need it. Have you heard of narrative text? Are you ready to learn it? Before we begin, let me introduce our group members. The first is me, Arista Putri Wulandari, and I will explain about definition of narrative text. The second is Bunga Meilina. She will explain about the purpose of narrative text. The third is Elsa Lailatul Marfu'ah. She will explain the types of narrative text. The fourth is Marlia Ulfa I. She will explain about the generic structure of narrative text. The fifth and the last one are Syukron Mahmudi and Wanda Nar Hanifah. They will explain about the language features of narrative text. Let's start from the first material. What is narrative text? According to Anderson, 1997, narrative is a piece of text tells a story and in doing so, entertains or informs the reader or listener. It should tell about an event or audience would find engaging. We may even think of our narrative as a movie in which the audience see people in action and hear them speak. Therefore, it should be detailed and clear, with event arranged in the order in some other effective way. From the definition above, it said that narrative text which contains about fantasy, fairy tales, or a true story that have occurred. Narrative text is a story with complication or problematic events, and it tries to find the resolution to solve the problems. And it's a story tells us about something interesting that has purpose to amuse and to entertain for the readers or viewers. We used narrative text when we tell a friend about something interesting that happened to us at work or at school, and we tell someone a joke. Usually in narrative text, there will be moral values that can be learned for the reader and listener. Okay, before moving on to second material, please pause this video for 2 minutes to read example of narrative text. And then, the second material will be explained by Bunga.
The purpose of narrative text is to entertain the reader, to tell a story to amuse, to teach a lesson moral. The purpose of narrative text is to amuse or to entertain the reader with a story. Set the scene, where and when the story happened, and introduce the participant of the story. Who and what is involved in the story tells the beginning of the problems which leads to the crisis climax of the main participant, and teach a lesson moral in bawang putih and bawang merah. Moral value is don't be a stingy person and don't be a foul person.
Hi, it's with me Elsa, and in this part we will talking about types of narrative text. So some of the common forms of narrative text are first, legend. A legend is a narrative of human actions that are perceived both by teller and readers to take place within human history. Typically, a legend is a short, traditional, and historicized narrative performed in a conversational mode. Formally, the term legend, from the Latin word legere, meaning to read, denoted as tale about a saint. Legends resemble folktales in concept. They might include supernatural beings, elements of mythology, or explanations of natural phenomena. They differ from folktales, however, in that they are popularly regarded as historical even though they are not entirely verifiable. Some legends are the unique property of the place or person that they depict, such as the legend of the Balik and Samosir Island in North Sumatra. A story of father who leaks the secrets of his wife as a fish to his sons, and then his village got disaster coming. The place where he sank later named after him, Toba Lake, and the place where his son survives in a little island in the middle of the lake is called Samosir Island, which named after the son's name. But many local legends are actually well-known folktales that have become attached to some particular person or place. For example, a widely distributed folktale of a man who acted perfidious towards his mother, then he cursed and turned into stone has become associated with Malin Kundang. Another tale, the legend of Prambanan Temple, a story when a girl named Roro Jonggrang asked Bandung Bondowoso, a well-known and powerful king, to build 1,000 temples in one night as a condition to marry her. Yet, she betrays his words in the end, then she condemned to be a statue in Prambanan. Second, fable. A fable is a short allegorical narrative making a moral point, traditionally by means of animal characters who speak and act like human beings. Fable taught story in order to highlight human values and weaknesses. A moral or lesson for behavior is woven into the story and often explicitly formulated at the end. The example of fable in narrative texts are Siranggir the cow, the Baru-Kelinting dragon, the mouse deer, and the crocodile, and etc. The third is fairy tale. According to Wikipedia, fairy tale is an English language term for a type of short narrative corresponding to the French phrase conte de fées. Like folklore, mythology, fables, tall tales, and other classic stories that have been handed down, fairy stories are part of the oral tradition of literatures. What makes the fairy tale different from the other is its use of magic and fantasy. Contrary to popular belief, the supernatural characters in fairy stories aren't always fairy godmother or winged spirits like Tinkerbell in Peter Pan. They might be magicians, ogres, dragons, brownies, elves, goblins, gnomes, or leprechauns. More often, fairy tales involve ordinary people who have experiences of a supernatural kind and are affected by charms, disguises, spells, or other fantastic occurrences. Although the stories were told centuries ago to entertain children, many were originally written for adults. The example of fairy tale in narrative texts are Lutung Kasarung, Damar Wulan, Golden Snail, and etc. Last but not least, there is science fiction. According to Basil Davenport, science fiction is fiction based upon some imagined development of science or upon the extrapolations of a tendency in society. Science fiction deals principally with the impact of actual or imagined science upon society or individuals. Science fiction is a special type of fiction or story. Humans have long wondered what life on another planet might be like. People have also wondered how different kinds of technology might affect life on Earth. Made-up stories that address such questions are called science fictions. This story might discuss ideas about scientific facts or real technology, but they also involve a lot of imaginations. For example, a story might describe people meeting with space aliens for the first time. Another story might imagine what would happen if robots or computers could think and feel like humans do. Many science fiction stories present different possible futures for human society. Science fiction seeks largely to entertain. However, many science fiction stories also imagine different ways people might act and relate to one another. In this way, science fiction may help reveal important things about human nature and society. Some examples of science fiction works are To the Moon from the Earth by Jules Verne, Starship Trooper by Robert Heinlein, A Space Odyssey by Arthur C. Clarke, and etc. So guys, from the previous explanation, we can make conclusion that Bawang Merah and Bawang Putih story categorized as legend, which is a narrative of human actions that are take place within human history. In legend, author's imagination was not restricted by physical reality or natural law. For example, by having a goldfish who could speak in the story. Once author makes up the rules for the imagined setting, the author must be consistent in following them by having an improvement in settings and situations. At the beginning, Bawang Putih was treated badly until she found the magic goldfish who later helped her. Sadly, it got killed by Bawang Merah. In place where the goldfish buried grew a tree the prince looking for, he met Bawang Merah and then married her. Legends also have improbable characters, like animals with humans' characteristics and mythical beasts. Legend can have more realistic characters besides imaginative one. In the story, it's the magical goldfish, who could talk and help Bawang Putih doing her task. Plot in legend frequently consists of hero's quest. The first, hero proves worthy of the quest. It might be fumbling and unsure in the beginning. After Bawang Putih left by her dad, she have to stay with her lazy stepsister and ruthless stepmother. Second, hero encountered trials along the way. It must be wise and courageous. Bawang Putih been through lots of hardships because of her stepsister and her mother. She was forced to do the houseworks and stuff, but after all, she's still being so kind. And then, hero is accompanied by a friend or mentor. Since Bawang Putih helped the goldfish, eventually they become friends. Hero's actions are to protect others from evil. The prince was about to be deceived by Bawang Merah who said the tree for the king's cure belonged to her. But Bawang Putih was the only one who finally pulled it out. Last, hero might question selves or become confused about good and bad and here defeats evil. When Bawang Putih had successfully pulled the tree for king's cure out, the prince was very grateful and then he married her. Bawang Putih left her stepmother and stepsister who was so relentless to her all the time, but she still forgave them in the end. Legend seeks to reveal truths that lie beneath the surface of life, desires and fears. At the beginning, Bawang Merah claimed that she owns the tree to the prince, but she could not manage to pull it out. Only Bawang Putih, the real owner, who could pull it out and give it to the prince. It also provides a context for readers to think about the dualities of life, good and evil, light and dark, innocence and guilt, reality and imaginary, heroism and cowardice, order and anarchy, and etc. In the story, the protagonist is Bawang Putih, the kind and helpful one, meanwhile Bawang Merah and her mother as the antagonists because they were very ruthless to Bawang Merah all the time.
Generic structure of narrative text. First is orientation. Orientation, it is about the opening paragraph where the characters of the story are introduced. Orientation of the narrative text. Yes, once upon a time, there lived a beautiful girl with her father, her stepmother, and her stepsister. Second, complication. Complication is where the problems in the story developed. Complication tells the beginning of the problem that causes the peak of the problem or what is commonly called the climax. This section usually involves the main character of the story. Complication of the narrative text. On the morning day, Bawang Putih went to the river to wash a lot of clothes. Then she saw a goldfish needed help. Its mouth was stuck on a hook. Bawang Putih felt sorry and helped the poor goldfish. "Thank you for your kindness," the goldfish said. Bawang Putih was very surprised that the goldfish could speak. However, the goldfish helped her to wash the clothes and they became best friends. Unfortunately, Bawang Merah, her stepsister, knew about the goldfish. She caught the goldfish and gave it to her mom. After that, they cooked it and ate it. When Bawang Putih knew it, she took the bone and buried it. She felt very sad that she could not take care of her best friend. Third is resolution. Resolution is where the problem in the story is solved. Resolution of the narrative text. Several days later, grew a beautiful tree on the burial. Surprisingly, a prince came to see it. He needed the tree to make his father well again. When he asked who owned the tree, Bawang Merah said that it was hers. However, when she wanted to pull the tree, she could not do it. Even everyone could not do it, but Bawang Putih. Bawang Putih pulled the tree easily and gave it to the prince. The prince married Bawang Putih. She forgave her stepmother and stepsister, and they lived happily ever after.
Next, I am Wanda Nar Hanifah. I will to explain about language feature of narrative text. First, use active verb or action verb, a verb that denotes an action. For example, was, speak, cooked, and ate. Unsur kebahasaan yang pertama yaitu menggunakan kata kerja aksi atau kata kerja yang menunjukkan suatu tindakan. Contohnya, mencuci, berbicara, memasak, dan makan. Second, use past tense. Narrative text uses the past tense verb or verb to. For example, lived, did, went, saw, become, and gave. Unsur kebahasaan kedua dari narrative text yaitu menggunakan kata kerja bentuk lampau atau verb 2. Contohnya, went merupakan verb 2 dari kata go. Saw merupakan bentuk kata 2 dari see. Gave merupakan bentuk kata kedua dari give. Third, use conjunction. Is a time conjunction to sequence event. For example, before, after that, and when. Unsur kebahasaan dari naratif teks yang ketiga yaitu menggunakan conjunction atau kata penghubung waktu untuk mengurutkan kejadian. Contohnya, sebelum, sesudah, dan ketika. Fourth, use specific noun. In general, the noun is used as a pronoun for an animal, person, or as an object in a story. For example, stepmother, stepsister, and goldfish. Unsur kebahasaan dari naratif teks yang keempat yaitu menggunakan kata benda atau noun. Pada umumnya, kata benda atau noun digunakan sebagai kata ganti orang, hewan, atau benda dalam cerita. Contohnya, ibu tiri, saudara tiri, dan ikan emas.
Number 5 is using adverb of time. Adverb of time is an adverb of time which serves to explain when of a question. It is not only limited to when. The adverb of time also explains how long and also how often or how often. And number 6 is using actions verb. Action verb not only describe physical actions performed by humans, animals, or something, but also describe mental actions such as thinking, imagining, and so on. And number 7 is specific character. The specific characters in the narrative text are the characters who run the story as a whole, or it can be called the main character. The main characters are described specifically, and these characters have an important role in the story. And the last is using direct speech. Direct speech, or commonly referred to as quoted speech, is a direct quote from someone's direct opinion or speech. or it can be called original speaker. That is marked with a question mark.
I think that's all our presentation. Hopefully useful for all of you. Have a nice day and thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.